Gotta do this now, Luna. You can get up if you want.
I'm good. How are you?
Hi. I think Mary Jo and Melody probably just got here. Hey.
Hey, coming in together because I'm too lazy to set up my computer.
Why not? So I'm gonna make you both the host.
Okay.
Sounds like a good plan.
Yep.
All right. Luckily the dog is quiet for a moment. Okay, so I'm gonna make you the host and then you guys have a great meeting. Did it work out good last time?
Yes,
Yeah, it
thank you
did.
so much, Becky.
Wonderful. All righty, have a good time. We'll see you later.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you? Good. How are you?
I'm fine.
You have a nice weekend?
Yeah, I went to see Paula Poundstone on Saturday night.
Oh, Paula Poundstone.
Oh, wow.
She's funny.
Where did you see her? Springfield?
No, she was at Amherst at the university.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
that's so cool.
I wish I had gone. Huh.
It was very funny.
Yeah, she's very smart.
It was amazing to me. She's talked for almost 2 hours and it wasn't telling jokes. It was just talking, but just the way she says things, it's just so funny.
I saw her many years ago in the 90s and she was just like extemporaneously interacting with the audience and it was funny.
Yep. Yep, that's what she was doing.
Mhm.
I don't know how anybody, I mean, her brain must go at just incredible speeds to be able to come up with the things that she does just off the top of her head. It was
Exactly.
amazing. So, where do we want to start here?
There you go.
Well, I sent an email. I did quite a bit of thinking about how we would present.
Oh, I
I
don't
don't
think
know
I
if-
got that email. You know, I made the mistake of using Microsoft for my email address for this. They have the worst email interface I have ever seen, ever. It's just unbelievably bad.
Hmm.
And I don't know whether I can, oh, wait a minute here, I can get into it. The last one I got from you, Mary Jo, was the survey draft.
That's the one.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah. I drafted the survey based on what notes I took. I'm not sure if it's exactly, it may need a little bit of tweaking, but
It was, the way you put things weren't necessarily the way I would put things, but it was fine.
okay. All right, and then along with that, I attached some stuff about the purpose of the survey.
Yeah.
I did some reading primarily in response to Mike Binsky's questions in relation to community policing.
Mhm.
And trying to figure out what is a good definition of community policing. And kind of delving into that a little bit more deeply with some resources that police officers and chief of police have written themselves about that, community policing in a small town. And kind of came to the conclusion that community policing, as they're speaking of it, is not really as much about programming as it is about kind of an attitude or a
Yeah.
relationship.
That's the impression I've gotten too.
And
That they,
and so some of those questions where he was saying, do you really want the police probing into your personal life this much, kind of came from a place which is actually the opposite of where you would want your community to be in a community policing community. Ideally, the relationship is characterized by trust and cooperation and transparency. I mean, those are the really important things to community policing, not how they spend their time, whether they're in the car or out of the car, whether they're, running workshops or whatever they might be doing, sort of immaterial. And it kind of harkens back to a comment that Kristen made about the fact that Shutesbury has had community policing for a long time, with maybe some brief times of it's not, according to the what she presented as to the people in Shutesbury.
yeah.
I kind of am, it's a little bit of a self-correction for me, because when we were talking in the bigger group, I was kind of questioning if we ever decided to have community policing. And it seems to me as though that's not really something that communities decide one way or another. It's really whether or not the police department has approached their job in such a way that they become accepted as part of the community,
I think that's the key thing, that the community policing essentially means that the police are accepted as part of the community, and the members of the community look to them for help when they need help. And I mean, to me, that's the very basic level of what you need police to be there for. That plus just the fact that they are there acts as a deterrent at some level. Without having any kind of police force, there would be no reason why people should follow the rules. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and Kristen's kind of already doing this, right? So
Yeah, exactly. She is already doing this. And again, I have had very little interaction with the police in this town, but I don't get the impression that there's a lot of animosity out there towards them.
Not at all.
No.
Not at all.
I think there are a couple of people who are vociferous about it. Unfortunately, one of them is on our committee. And I don't know if you are on next door, whatever, next door neighbors, next door. There's every once in a while there's somebody ranting about it, but in general, I just haven't heard anything negative about the police here, other than these two individuals who seem to think that the police are out to get us all. It's bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So what's
So, but well, let's back up a little bit. We've had a chance to think about what we did and to look at what Mary Jo sent us.
Mhm.
Are there any things that we want to back up and revisit?
There are a couple of questions that so I was thinking that we might not, in view of this conversation about community policing, need to really ask a separate question about community policing.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a moot point. So
Yeah.
I agree with you.
I mean, isn't that what everybody wants already? So I think we could just like nix question 6. The other thing that I did see though is there were a lot of things that could potentially fall. They wouldn't exactly fit in the list of services. That was question 3. But I think that we could ask about some of the services that that police officers provide in other communities. And I think I listed them in that email. Maybe we could do another question with just a list of things like that. I'm not looking at it right now, so I wrote it last week, so I don't have a really good recall of what's there.
Okay, but before we go on to that, I just want to talk a little bit more about question 6. You said we should nix it, but what we put there is needs to be a larger group discussion. And I think it needs to be. I think we can't just eliminate it.
I think that's right, because we need to
Okay.
have a clear understanding of what community policing is that's shared by our committee. And
Yes.
maybe publicly voiced, actually, because I think a lot of people don't understand that concept.
I absolutely agree. It needs to be publicly voiced. I'm not sure what the proper venue is for that, but maybe it will just be enough to have something addressing that in the report that we make, because the report will be made, that'll be made public. I don't know how many people will look at it.
Yeah.
So the other
Okay,
thing,
so we're just going to leave the question 6 as it is then, to say it needs to be a larger group discussion.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right, so sorry to interrupt, go back.
okay. Yeah, so I don't know, could we share screen and look at that list of stuff that I took from?
Yeah. You want to do in your email, I mean?
However we share screen, it's not in, actually, we don't have to pull it from email.
Oh, where do you want to?
You
can
don't
get
have
it
to
in
share the
chat.
screen. I've pulled it up on my screen.
Okay.
I've got it
I
for
have-
myself.
I have to be able to see it though.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
So,
pull it up for yourself. I'm just saying you don't need to share the screen.
Okay, pull it up, Mary Jo.
okay,
Just give us a sec here.
what are we looking at?
I guess.
Sorry,
open.
technical difficulties.
Okay, so what do you want? Then go to the internet.
It's not on the internet, it's actually in a file. I need to find it.
Is this under what you called ideas for community results, outcomes and benefits based on recommendations of the International Association of Chiefs of Police?
I think it might be. That sounds
Okay.
vaguely familiar.
The article was policing in small, rural and tribal communities. Now, which one are we?
Right? Maybe we're all of that.
I don't think we're tribal.
You don't think so? In our own kind of white way?
Speak for yourself.
You might be right about that. Yeah.
Let me see. Where did I put this?
Mary Jo, just get it off the internet again. You think that's it?
It's not on the internet.
Yes.
Is there a way that I can share it with you?
Oh, wait, here it is. I got it.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see.
I think some of this is more elaborate than our, what do we have? 5 people on the police force or something like that?
Yes.
I think like develops learning goals and model curricula and training for each level of leadership. I think that's a little beyond us.
Yeah, you know what I was thinking though. Maybe I'm ranging a little bit far afield, but this is just me. I actually think that if we were going to cooperate with local towns, that we could actually do some of those things that seem like bigger goals for a small police force.
Absolutely, but I think that's beyond the scope of what we're doing in this committee.
I think you might be right about that. I think that's really more up to the police department themselves than it is up to us.
You mean collaborating with other towns?
If
I
they
disagree.
wanted, I would think if they wanted to, they could. They're already calling other towns when they need additional backup.
Okay,
Yeah, we're
so
not suggesting 2 police chiefs. We're talking about the coverage.
Let's see.
Is that what you were?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know. Is there anything here that we might consider asking about?
well, how about the first paragraph on the next page after the beginning of this whole section? It says collaborates with community members through a variety of programs that focus on public health, education, mental health, and other programs not traditionally part of the criminal justice system. Now, I think that Kristen is doing that to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
But is that something that we want to actually ask the people in the survey if they think that's valuable?
I think maybe that we should,
Well,
if Kristen is doing it. Although,
I just don't want to hamstring her because like I don't want to like come out, ask these
Exactly.
questions, and then
That-
people
that
don't
was-
like it, and then like she can't do what she wants to do.
That
Or,
was
it'll
my
be
thought
awkward.
too.
Yeah.
We don't want to set it up so that people can say, no, we don't want you doing this.
Exactly.
Exactly. And then she's in a rock and a hard place,
Because I think what she's doing is really valuable. And at
Yes.
least as things are currently done around here, there's no other place, no other way to access this stuff for a lot of people.
So maybe if we don't talk about programming, maybe we could pick some things that are more qualitative. I mean, some of the surveys that other towns did that we were looking at that were more evaluative did include things like they did ask people about issues around diversity or cultural sensitivity.
Well, what kind of question were you thinking? Like, do you think our police department is culturally sensitive, or I mean, I'm not quite sure what we want to ask in this case.
How, like something like, how important is it to you that
or is it important?
that our police officers be trained and this isn't the perfect wording, trained and adept at dealing with people from diverse communities?
I think that's a loaded question,
Agreed.
because if you say it's not important, then that makes you look like a real jerk.
Yep.
And if you say it is important, that sort of implies that you don't think that the police are doing it now, even though
Exactly.
it doesn't. But I just think it's a loaded question, and I don't know how to write it so that it's a neutral question, if you know what I'm saying.
Yep. I know what you're saying.
Well,
I mean,
look at the last one, Cheryl. Says implements ongoing top-down training for all officers in cultural diversity and related topics in order to help build trust and police legitimacy in diverse communities. I mean, we could just say, you know, well, maybe that's another loaded question. Never mind. Never mind.
Do you know if I mean, I know that we send police to training, but as I understand it, it's really the basic training. Do you know if they have ongoing training, you know, like doctors and nurses have?
Good question. They have the bridge. Kristen's doing the bridge thing, but I don't know. I mean, and you know, that even raises the topic of like, not just training in how to deal with people, but like, do they know how to use their guns? Like, you know, because there are accidental police shootings when people don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's my understanding that they have to either, one of these issues, one of these options, but I don't know which ones are used. They either have to have so many hours a year in, you know, practice at a whatever
Right.
you shoot guns at, or they have to pass a test. That's
Okay.
my understanding, but I don't know that that's really what happens in all small towns. I know they have to do that like in Boston, and I know the state police have to do that.
Right. But see, like, that's a level of transparency that we as townspeople don't have. We don't know what level of training our officers have on anything.
Right, and maybe that's,
What
maybe that's
qualifies them
something-
to be police officers?
yeah, that's a good question. Maybe that's something we need to bring up in the general meeting and ask. I mean, that's something that we haven't discussed with Kristen. She's told us all the things they do. She's told us what their philosophy of community policing is. We haven't talked about training at all.
Yeah.
And I agree, that's something that it's really important that the townspeople know that information.
Well, it builds confidence and legitimacy. I mean,
Yeah.
because if we don't have confidence in their training, then, you know, I think there could be a lot of areas for disrespect both ways.
I agree, absolutely. So I think that's something we need to bring up, but
Okay.
that does not, I don't think that's something that we should put in. I mean, putting a question about training in here either assumes that the people who are taking the survey know what the training should be, or it assumes that they should just have a good idea and, you know, without any real knowledge can put down, yes, they should have this much or so on.
No, I think the question, Cheryl, really should be around transparency. Because, you know, it's not that, I mean, obviously we want to, do they have training or not? But I think it's about what is disclosed to the public, like what is on their website. You know, like
Yes.
if they just put on there, every officer has to have this X, Y, and Z in order to be an officer, that would be a matter of transparency. And so my question is, or my point is, I think we should ask a question about transparency. Like, do you think that how important is transparency with the public in terms of training requirements? How important should that be? You know, something like that.
Oh, no, I think,
that's
I disagree entirely. I don't think
That's
that should be
another
on the
question.
Oh, that's
survey.
another look. Okay, this is just off the top of my head, but I guess my point is, the question is really about transparency and training.
And I think we need to bring that up in the meeting to, and ask it in a way in our committee meeting to just to say, you know, where is this information available?
Mhm.
Not necessarily individually. I don't think we need to know individually, but just in general, what kind of training police officers have, what kind of yearly updates they have. That is something that should be open information to the public that
Well,
wants to
and
know.
what are the minimum requirements to be a police officer? Like, do you
Yeah,
have to have a,
it-
you have to
it
have a high
might be-
school education, a college education? Do you have to, you know?
Yeah, we may not want to know minimum requirements, but yes, I know what you're saying. I'm just saying that we may be appalled at how minimum the requirements are. I don't
Yeah,
know.
right. That's could be a real possibility.
I would, I have assumed for the last, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years, however long I've thought about it, that in this day and age, police officers at least have a bachelor's degree, and there are plenty of programs, or at least an associate's degree, not necessarily a bachelor's. There are plenty of programs out there in criminal science. Lots and lots of schools have programs in criminal science. And so I just sort of assumed that that's what police did before they went into a police force, but it's a good possibility that I'm wrong about that.
Yeah, in my reading, I think that I saw high school verification.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's scary because,
It is.
I'd hate to see an 18-year-old out there with a gun and all of the law behind him.
Mhm.
That would scare. It's bad enough that they do that in wars. I'd really hate to see it in policing.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so here's one of the reasons why I kind of got involved in this. I was concerned that there was no potential recourse. I mean, God forbid that we had someone on the police force who was inappropriate or disturbing in some way. How would we know? How would that come to our attention?
That's
Is
a really
there a
good
grievance
question.
policy? And the real problem that I see out there in terms of the way that most police departments work is that if you have a problem with the police department, you have to go to the police department
Right.
to resolve it.
Well, I don't think that's necessarily true in small towns. I don't remember exactly what happened in Shirley, but I know that there were a couple of incidents where people were unhappy with the police response to something. They went directly to the select board. The select board is the police department's boss, essentially. And so in a small town, you do have somebody you can go to. Now, whether anything's going to happen out of that, it depends on the select board,
Mhm.
But it's different in a city where there's so many layers where you really don't know who you should be going to. But in small towns, there's only one layer.
Yeah. Well, and when I was thinking about it from the perspective potentially of a person of color in a majority white community where everybody in the select board is white, assumedly the police officer in charge is condoning potentially racist behavior. I just didn't see that would be like a thing that they would automatically do or know to do.
You're right. They may not. I mean, I'm sure there are lots of people living in this town who are totally unaware of what the town government is like. I moved here from Pennsylvania where there was no town government. Everything was done by counties. And so you were so removed from whoever was making decisions that it was like things coming down from God. You just had no interaction with them at all. And when I moved here and I found out, well, I moved to Connecticut and found out that that's not the way it's done in New England. I was fascinated. So I started going to town meetings, but I'm sure there are plenty of people who don't even know that there are town meetings.
Right.
So I don't know what's the, but the whole point, I think, of what we're doing here is to put out, what the whole committee is doing is to put out some kind of document that talks about what the police is doing, what the police department is doing, and how that works in our town. And if we have any suggestions as to how it can be done, something can be done that's a little better, here they are. And one of them would be, you disappeared, you're back. One of them would be more transparency, so that the people in the town have the opportunity to know what level of training the people in the police people, the police have, and who should they talk to if they have an issue with the police? And, I think that's a really valuable thing that we could be doing in the committee as a whole, is to make that kind of information more readily known within the town. But that assumes that the people in the town make enough of an effort to read what we report,
Right, right.
We can't make them do that.
Yeah.
So, well, I have a question about that. I mean, Melody, you're probably as much a minority in this town as anybody is.
Mhm.
Do you feel that you're less listened to than a white person would be?
I mean, by the police?
By anybody in the town?
Oh, yeah.
That's really sad. I don't know what to do about that, but that's really sad.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can't legislate morality.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
So, I mean, I guess, we can't control for individuals. I mean, and I'm thinking specifically of a neighbor I have who's a Trump supporter. I mean, what are you going to do? And it's an incredibly polarizing environment right now. So in a way, it's not shocking.
Yeah, probably. I mean, God knows how long this whole polarized environment is going to go on. It seems to
I
have
think
been
it's our
going
new
on for
normal,
years now.
sadly.
But maybe we shouldn't be thinking about the way things are right now, because hopefully this is not the way well, maybe it is the way things have always been, but at least we're waking up about it, and hopefully it's not the way it will always be. I don't know. We're getting way too philosophical for me.
So can we just go back to basics for a minute, just so we're all on the same page?
Yep.
What is it we're hoping to accomplish tonight?
I would like to finish up drafting the survey so that we can present that next week.
Yep, that was my understanding.
Because we have a pretty short timeline here. I would like to protest to the select board on their time limit that they gave this group, because my God, we didn't even get started until like a month after we were supposed to.
Yeah, I agree. And this is not something that should be rushed.
No, it really shouldn't be. So maybe what we need to do is go to a select board meeting and speak up about that. I don't know.
No, they don't listen. No, they don't. I mean, it's the reality. Well, I mean, in terms of their process, I'm not trying to be overly negative. What I'm saying is the way that their meetings are structured. There's not a lot of time for public comment. I'm not trying to say anything about them. I'm just talking about.
I don't necessarily mean to do it as public comment.
Okay.
But to ask to be on the agenda.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah.
So maybe that's something else we should bring up the meeting next week.
Yeah, the timeline.
They might want a status report anyway.
Well, yeah, they should. There's no problem them asking and us presenting a status report, but I don't want to get shut down just because they think we should have it done in 3 months or whatever, and we don't have it done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm writing a note to myself about bringing this up.
Very loud.
Okay,
So,
so really what we were going to talk about tonight was question number 7 on our survey. So is there anything else on the survey before we get into that we should be looking at?
anything in one, I think anything in 1 through 5, you want to just look at 1 through 5 and see if I wrote it in a way that
Word document.
you want it to be.
Okay, hold on.
I thought they were fine.
Okay.
I mean, there are other ways to put them, but I think in general, these are fine. We can certainly refine them a little bit if we want to.
I think
But,
question 7 is really the $50,000 question.
Well, I was just going to say, I think 1 through 5 are worded very neutrally so that we're not going to get responses that have been pointed in a direction, which is something that I really wanted to avoid.
Mhm.
I think they're really good that way. So, and question number 6, we want to discuss with the whole group, which, we already figured that out last week anyway. So it's just, I think, question number 7, as far as I'm concerned, that we need to think about.
And I would say based on our discussion, we're pretty well prepared to talk about question 6. And are we going to say that we had considered writing a question about community policing and we're not going to recommend it, and this is why?
Oh, well, we can just ask for their input,
Okay.
but we can also say what we think. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then I think if we're ready to talk about question 7, I don't feel quite as ready to talk about question 7 as question 6. Oh, I know.
We did discuss this a little bit.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to send those articles, and I don't know if people are going to take time to read them, frankly. The articles that I read about community policing in small towns to the larger group so that they have a little bit more of a context other than what they remember from what Kristen was saying on what community policing is from a certain perspective.
I think you're right that it's likely they're not going to read them. What I suggest is that you prepare, not formally prepare, but be ready to present what you read very briefly, especially the parts that you thought were really valuable. And then say, if you want to know more about this, these are the articles that I read to get this information. But this is something that we just discussed a little while ago because it was one of the things that you had listed under here. And it is something that we have talked about in that group. I don't know how to present this question in a survey in a way that doesn't imply what kind of response we want. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's a right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how to put it in a neutral fashion so that we get what people really think. And it may be because not enough people know about this issue at all. And so they really can't have an opinion.
Well, why can't we just ask, maybe this isn't one question, right? Maybe you break up the question a little bit and you get really basic. One question is, do you consider police to be first responders? Yes or no? And then from there, you say, if yes, check off the issues you think they should be able to deal with. I'm just shooting this off the top of my head. But, something like that. And where we don't try to deal with it in one question.
Well, that's not exactly what the question is getting to. I mean, the way it's worded here, we're saying Shutesbury police as first responders. That's only as background. Because they're the first responders, they end up being a resource for dealing with social issues.
Right.
So maybe we don't, and we've already asked about first responders in an earlier question.
We did.
Maybe the question should be,
Hold on.
well, it could be, oh God, this is all really bound up with the whole community policing thing.
I don't see a first responder question, Cheryl. I'm missing it, maybe?
It's in number 5, I think. Number 4,
Number 4.
isn't it?
It doesn't say first responder.
No, you're right, it doesn't.
Yeah.
We talked about it, but somehow we never got it in any of these questions.
Could we frame it in terms of perceived community needs?
Frame it as what?
Could we frame it in terms of perceived community needs?
Yeah, that would be a good framing.
So do you think the community needs someone who's skilled in dealing with elder abuse? Do you think that the community needs someone who?
I wouldn't do it that way. I would do you think the community needs someone who is skilled in dealing with social issues such as needs in elders?
Well, why wouldn't we just say, do you think that the police should be able to deal with these types of issues? Or should that be for somebody else? I mean, I think that's really the question.
Yeah, you're right. That is really the question. It'd have to be worded really carefully. Because the way you just said it sort of implies that we don't think that that's correct.
Yeah, well, and it's not enough information either, because the fact of the matter is that the police, because they're first responders, are going to deal with all of these issues.
Right.
Yeah, I remember having this discussion with Kristen when she was talking, I think at the first presentation that she gave, about whether this is appropriate use of the police department, because I'm not even sure they're trained in this stuff. And whether it makes more sense to have somebody else in the community that is trained in this stuff be available. But you're right, that would just mean that the police as first responders refer this person to that person who then refers them to somebody else.
Well,
I'm
let me
not sure that's
give an example. Sorry, I need to cut you off, but you know, we had fire alarms going off in our house, like the smoke alarms.
yeah.
And so we called the fire department because there was smoke, and the cops showed up. And I remember asking him at the time, I was like, oh, I'm interested that you're here. And he said, well, we have to be deployed anytime the fire department is deployed. And I said, oh, that's interesting. So I guess the question is, is this the type of thing where police go to every single incident like that? But he ended up just standing there while the firefighters were doing their job. And I remember thinking, why is he just hanging out here? I didn't ask him that, but so to me, it's like, it's the similar kind of thing. Like, so do the police just go to every single one of these calls, and then they don't necessarily provide service, but they're there?
Well,
it's the best use of their time.
let me respond to that.
Okay.
I have also called the fire department, not when my smoke alarm went off, but when I had a chimney fire. I called 911. 4 fire trucks and 6 police cars came to my house. And by the time they got there, I had put the fire out. And I was flabbergasted that so many people showed up. And so being the person that I am, I said, why are all of these people here? And it's because if there is a fire, especially in these old wood houses, if there is a fire that's not gotten under control really quickly, it engulfs the whole house really quickly. And in that case, you need to have all of those fire trucks there. And you also need to have at least a couple police cars to manage traffic. And so, when you hear it put that way, it makes sense.
Mhm.
But for the most part, the police stand around doing nothing because there's no need for them. But you
Right,
don't want to have to wait for them.
Right, and yeah, and I mean, I wasn't being utterly critical of him. It was just more of a question, like, why is he here and what's
Yeah.
he here and what's he?
Well, that was mine too. Why are you guys all here? I don't need you. And then, when they explained it to me, then it made perfect sense.
Yeah. He didn't go, I can't remember, what did he say? Did he say, I think it was Marcus, actually.
Yeah.
I can't remember what he said, but I think he said, well, we have to go out on all these calls, regardless.
Yeah. So he could have been a little more forthcoming with his explanation.
Right, and at the
But
time,
it
we
does make
were like,
Yeah,
okay,
it does make sense if you know what they're trying to be proactive. They're trying to, they want to have people on hand in case they're needed instead of waiting 10 minutes for somebody to show up and by that
That
time
makes
the house
sense.
is burnt down.
that makes sense. I don't
So,
know.
but question number 7. I just wonder if we're opening a can of worms by asking this question. Because in truth, given the type of town we are and the size of our police department and all of our emergency services, the fact is that the Shutesbury police are always going to be the first ones dealing with, somebody who needs some mental health help, or somebody who, well, I don't know. Do we have homeless in this town? Has anybody ever seen a person who didn't seem to have a home in this town?
You?
Well, I don't know if I shared this story already. But, and Marianne wouldn't care if I told this story. So Marianne had to deal with a homeless person that showed up at the library.
Oh, that's right. Yes, you did talk about that.
Yeah.
So
And
we do occasionally have
people that
homeless.
she knew who to call. There was nobody else to call,
Right, exactly.
right?
I mean, the truth is that the police, our emergency services essentially is fire and police.
Yeah.
And unless it's a fire, you don't think to call fire, you call police.
Mhm.
And they're the ones who are going to show up if it's some social problem as opposed to a real policing problem.
Yeah.
So the
Well,
truth
they
is,
show up to medical emergencies too,
yeah, I know. So the truth is that I don't know that we should ask this question because there's no alternative in our town, I guess is what I'm saying.
I agree with you. And I think it could raise more questions than it answers.
Exactly. I don't want to open a can of worms. I don't want people to start asking questions when there's no alternative.
Agreed. What do you think?
I don't know. I think it's an interesting conversation to have. I think it's an important conversation to have. And we should probably just have this conversation.
But why? If to her point, if there's no alternative.
I was just gonna say, I think we could have this conversation with the rest of the people in our study group.
But why if there's no alternative?
Because I think.
Well,
it
maybe
drives-
somebody else can think of,
it drives
maybe
home the
somebody else
point.
has a different idea about it.
I just don't want to be so navel gazing that we're wasting time. I
don't
mean,
think-
I don't like 3-hour meetings.
I don't think that people really understand what being a first responder means in a small town unless they have an opportunity to think about what happens when various situations occur and who we have actually to help. And honestly, it's the police. Those are the people that we have to help.
Yep.
We don't have anybody else.
Right.
It's not like there's anybody else who can call.
Right. Then why are we discussing it?
We're discussing it because having the discussion helps people realize what the role of the police is, and that's an important thing for people to think about. I'm not talking about people in the community, I'm talking about people in our study group. And then I think maybe we in our study group can decide what we want to do with that.
I think that's probably the best approach, because I really don't think it would be a good idea to put this out in this survey for the
Mhm.
reasons we've discussed. But I do think it should be discussed within the group and addressed somehow, somewhere, just not in this survey.
Okay.
I can live with it.
Okay. So I guess we're done, unless you have other things that you should be added.
I love
I
efficient.
mean, we're down to 5 questions, but question number 4 has several subparts to it.
Yeah.
Oh, here's a thing. How do you get people to fill this survey out?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's going to be an issue.
in practicing kind of for this, and in tandem with this, I sent a survey to the board members of the Leverett Food Co-op. And guess how many people returned that survey? 0.
Yeah.
It's about a week and a half. So I think we've got to think about how we're going to get people to fill it out. I mean, I'm going to suggest to the co-op that they should be given out some sort of
Incentivized.
raffle entry or something. Because if the people who are supposed to be most interested aren't taking the time to fill it out, then how
Well,
are we going
there's-
to get our
There are
service?
there are issues with that. Certainly, when you're doing a clinical trial, in order to get people to participate, you are not allowed to pay them or give them anything of value, because that is considered incentive to get people who are too poor. You know, I mean, you're allowed to like pay for their transportation so that people aren't out money to participate, but you're not allowed to give them anything above and beyond that. And so what you have to do is say, you know, it's unlikely that you will benefit from the outcome of this study. However, we will be doing these tests, and you will get the results of these tests, and your doctor will get the results of these tests, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that we do not want to give an incentive, because that will incentivize some people to fill out the questions without thinking about them, just to be in a raffle or whatever.
You know what? I disagree with you, because having lived in New York City for 9 years, I participated in medical studies at the at Columbia, and also retail studies. I mean, this is not medical or retail, but it's a little bit retail consumer. I mean, we're consumers of police service, though. I don't think it's the same as a clinical trial. And I do think that incentivizing people, and it doesn't have to be something major. I mean, we could think of something that's, you know, I don't know, but I disagree with you. I think you could incentivize people, because it's not the same as a clinical trial. And it's more along the lines of a retail study.
Okay.
Well, in view of that,
I don't disagree with you on that. I'm not sure I agree, but I don't disagree with you on that. I would prefer to incentivize by having a little introductory paragraph that says something about the committee is examining ways that policing in Shutesbury can be not more responsive, but more integrated into the community, or more better understood, something like that. And your help in answering these 5 questions would be would help us a great deal in doing that. That's the way I would try to incentivize it. But I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't get up and argue against something a little more concrete.
I think there should be something concrete, and I don't know what that would be. You know, I don't know. We'd have to figure it out. I mean, it can't be something too monetary in nature, but I think it would have to be along the lines of something service in nature. You know, here's a thought, just to throw it out there. What if we said that they would their survey response would be entered in the raffle to win a ride along with Kristen.
Oh, no, that won't work because she's trying to get people to ride along for nothing. She wants people to ride along.
I know, but you know what? People don't know that yet.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it would be a way to encourage her program, but also it's not really a major gift. Do you know what I mean? But we can make it sound like
Yeah.
it.
The only downside to that I see is that it would make the people who don't win think that they can't ride along.
That's true.
But
Good
it's a good idea.
Mhm.
How about if we just say, everybody who fills out this can have a ride along?
It's true.
That's true.
It's true. It's your ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? That's actually a really good idea.
Yeah.
We can run it by Kristen, see what she says.
Your survey
But-
results have been received. Here's your ticket for the ride along.
Oh, and
And-
maybe if they win a golden ticket, they get coffee also.
You know, when I met with Kristen to finish going over the spreadsheet that I'm doing, I brought food because it was noon. And so I figured she was using her lunch hour for this. It didn't occur to me to bring coffee. And then I thought on the way over, you know, the last time we had coffee, she had coffee in the meeting, somebody had to drive all the way to another town to get it for her.
Exactly.
That's right.
It's crazy. It's crazy how few services we have in this town.
I know. Well, the Leverett Co-op, you can get coffee,
But it's in Leverett.
but it's in Leverett.
Exactly.
No, but it's a point.
Anyway, I like it. You know, if you fill this out, you can request a ride along.
Yeah, that certainly. Of course, we should also say, and even if you don't fill it out, you can request a ride along.
Exactly. But I mean, I do think something a little extra, like, maybe it would include a coffee break with Kristen or something. I don't know. I don't know if that's a real incentive.
okay.
Oh,
So-
coffee break with Kristen is a good idea, but well, for one winner, that's a good idea.
For one winner,
Yeah.
you and Kristen can go have coffee.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Because the more people who get to know Kristen on a personal basis, the better the interaction with the
Yeah.
police department will be.
Yeah. So their survey completion qualifies them to request a ride along, and one lucky winner will be chosen at random for a coffee with Kristen.
Yeah, we have to bring this up with Kristen, but I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. Well, maybe we want to ask her that before the meeting, so we don't put her on the spot at the meeting.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah. So sometimes in order to get people to participate, you can give people like things that are informational.
Like what?
Like something that would potentially be useful to them
Well, if you,
that they could download.
but everybody should have that.
Well,
Yeah.
everybody should get a ride along too.
Well, and you can,
Yeah,
but not everybody can have coffee with Kristen.
good point. Okay, I mean, if this is, you think this is the one and only thing you want to use?
Well, I mean, it's tangible. It's no big deal. It's Kristen's time, obviously, but
Yeah, but I think she would be willing to spend an hour with somebody.
exactly. And well, how much does
In this
coffee
case.
cost? Right? Couple bucks.
Well, it depends on where you get it, but if you went to Leverett Co-op, yeah, a couple bucks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we done?
I think maybe.
Anything else we want to talk about?
I think we're good. Who's going to ask Kristen about the coffee with Kristen thing?
I'll do it.
Okay.
I've built up a pretty good rapport with her over the hour that we sat discussing these things. She
Awesome.
started out a little defensive, but after a while, I think she figured out that, you know, I'm trying to help, not cause problems for her. So,
Yeah. Okay, cool.
That's good.
Great. Good meeting.
Oh, just.
Yeah,
quick-
we only spent 3 hours doing this. I thought that was, I think that's pretty good.
Yes, hurry up.
Okay, sorry, just quickly, did any of you read the thing from Paul Blatch?
Yes,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's, it takes my breath away how somebody can be so ignorant.
why do you say that?
Well, maybe ignorance not the right word. I- he had
Stop
a
recording.
view. Maybe we're talking about different things. Are you talking about the thing that the letter that he wrote to the